Hi there, and thank you for joining me for today's live reading of The Better Man by Laurie Lewis, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Friday, March 24th, 2023. 4 wheels and a tank of gas can change your life. Laramee Stone had a bit of experience on the matter. Her battered old truck had been what she needed in the hour of her need. An express train to adventure, an impromptu flight to freedom, an escape from loss. All from the seat of this old truck. Her battered Ford was still a time machine of sorts, transporting her from the Arizona desert back to a time when the future looked as endless as a snow-swept Colorado prairie. But she was different now. A hard-edged, square peg that no longer fit in the promising round world of her youth. She twisted the cracked leather on her steering wheel. Her mom's early morning phone call had been the catalyst, the rocket fuel that sent Laramee tossing essentials into her suitcase and shooting her boss a text with the news that she was taking a few weeks off without notice. She groaned at her foolishness. That was brilliant. No matter. It was the slow season when fewer people booked guided horseback vacations, so work was scarce. And if her boss fired her, oh well. The sad truth was that in the post-pandemic world where people ate out more than in, she could make a better wage flipping burgers. She took a deep breath as she surveyed the Alpine Peak Ski Resort sign. She'd only come here a few times. Once on a school-sponsored ski trip, and once when her Rodeo Queen prize package included a week's stay at the posh resort. Posh, she tittered. That was a word she hadn't used since she was 15. This place and the past were creeping up on her. The thought forced Laramee to consider her current appearance. She'd left in such a hurry that she hadn't concerned herself with grooming. Glancing down at her grungy work jeans and then into the rearview mirror confirmed her worst fears. She looked as bad as she thought. Tattered jeans, her long brown hair shoved under and falling out of a knit cap, and nails that looked like they were manicured by a rabid badger. She wasn't embarrassed or ashamed of what hard work had done to her, but she momentarily reconsidered her last-minute plan to pop by the resort's bakery to grab a box of their world-famous ginger cookies for her mom. Then again, what did she care about the establishment's spandex-clad ski clientele's opinions of her? She was buying her mom a box of her favorite cookies. As she feared, there were no empty spaces in the guest parking lot. New snow and lots of it sent ski people into a frenzy to hit the slopes. There was, however, an empty spot in the check-in lane between two shiny, pricey SUVs. She would be in the place for just a few minutes, she told herself, so whispering her father's shopping mantra under her breath, get in, get out, get going, she drove into the empty spot and entered the resort's lobby. The beauty and elegance of the Alpine's elegantly rustic interior left her awed again. She breathed in the scents of wood smoke and some musky aromatic infused into the air as her eyes were drawn to the fire blazing in the massive stone fireplace. Comfy sofas and chairs surrounded the fire, where she once sat in the company of young men vying for the chance to teach a pretty rodeo queen how to ski. She pulled back from those memories and others it stirred as she turned to scan the rest of the grand lobby. A silver placard advertised the day's primary events: a retirement party in Ballroom 1, a meeting in Ballroom 2, and the Smithfield Westerly wedding in Ballrooms 3 through 5. It sounded like a grand affair. She walked on and looked for the bakery. It was where she remembered, except its sought-for sign now appeared over a sparkling bright window painted with cupcakes and cookies in pinks and browns and greens. An unexpected face appeared in the doorway. The young man did a double take and beamed an excited smile her way as he waved her over. Laramee recognized him immediately. Duncan? Yep, except I hope I'm not a brat anymore. He swept her up in a bear hug. Even so, you were my favorite babysitter. I've missed you. She suddenly felt much older than her 25 years. Preferring a quick change of subject, she broke free of his hug and slid into a stool. When did you start working here? October. Employees get big discounts on lift tickets, and I'm a bit of a ski bum when I'm not in class. He placed a mug before her and filled it with steaming cocoa. It's so good to see you, Laramee. Man, how long has it been? He added an extra large swirl of whipped cream and handed her a spoon. She began to stir, ignoring the question. Thanks for the cocoa. I forgot how cold the Colorado March can be. But I can't stay long. I'm parked in the check-in line. Duncan swept her worry away along with the sweep of his dish rag across the chocolate slosh on the counter. No one will notice your car parked out there if you sit a few minutes to catch up. She begged to differ, knowing that her ramshackle Ford was likely generating considerable attention. I'm in a bit of a hurry to get home. Oh, it'll be nice to have you close again. We've all missed you. It's been years since I've seen you at any of the big family gatherings. Laramie felt the walls closing in on her. Listen, I'd love to get together with you sometimes, but just the two of us, okay? I don't like crowds. He laughed as his brow wrinkled in protest. Since when, Your Majesty? Laramie dipped her head and took a sip to evade answering, and then Mercy, in the form of a timer beep, caught Duncan's attention. I need to check the next batch of cookies. Speaking of which, she said, I need 24 of your famous ginger cookies. They're my dad's favorite. Her mom's too. Probably because boxes of the delicious treats were Duncan's father's gift to his 4 siblings each Christmas. 24 will do it. An attractive man with brown, wavy hair entered the bakery and stood back as if waiting for Laramie to be served. He was tall and muscled with the most captivating eyes. Their ice blue coloring gave them a vulnerability that drew Laramie in until she had to force herself not to stare. He had a good face with features and irregularities that needed to be studied more than simply seen, beginning with a few scars and a nose which was slightly crooked as if it had been broken at some point. She thought it actually added to his character. Welcome, Duncan said to the man. What can I get for you? The man stepped back farther and pointed to Laramie. The lady was here first. Laramie glanced the man's way, acknowledging his kindness with a muted smile, while Duncan completely dismissed her presence. She's my cousin. We're just catching up. What will you have? Laramie glared at Duncan, but she hid her frustration from the man. He looked her way and she faced the opposite direction, so he didn't get the false impression that she was checking him out, which she told herself she was most assuredly not doing. The last thing she wanted or needed was another guy in her life, well-intentioned or not. Duncan's dismissal of her and her urgent parking situation ramped up Laramie's stress. She peered past the tall glass windows of the lobby to make sure no tow truck was pulling in to take her truck away. No truck was visible, but her glance caught and held on another interesting sight. A stunning couple entered the lobby, looking as if they were modeling for a cover shoot. 2 bellmen followed behind with 2 luggage carts. One held 4 large suitcases and the other carried 2 bulging garment bags. The black bag had Armani written across it, along with the name of an LA men's store. The white garment bag bore the name Monique Lullier, a high-end designer of gorgeous wedding gowns. The couple was evidently the bride and groom mentioned on the Alpine's event placard. A woman in a red suit arrived to greet the couple. Laramie's heart broke a little when she saw the tender way the bride leaned into the groom and how his arm slid behind her as they spoke. They were a love match, not a couple just falling into marriage or 2 people marrying out of convenience. She wondered if she ever looked as smitten and happy as they did, but before she went too far down that road, she reminded herself that men were the cause of most of the chaos in her life. After a few moments, the bear claw man came up behind her saying, "Excuse me." She shifted left to allow him to pass, but he stopped suddenly and did a double take before stepping back inside again. His abrupt retreat surprised her. She assumed he'd forgotten part of his order, but she was too focused on the handsome, loving couple to care. They were being escorted down the hall toward the Alpine's elegant, magical reception hall, where they would celebrate the beginning of their life together. When they were beyond her sight, she scoffed at her silliness, only to find Bear Claw Man still in the doorway, huddled behind her, also watching the couple's exit. She blushed at the thought that he'd noticed her mooning over someone else's happy moment, but before she could come up with a suitably indignant response, he proceeded out. The Alpine's door and another sight caught her attention. The 2 bellmen who had attended to the Smithfield Westerly's luggage were now quite obsessed over her truck. One stayed with it while the other hurried back into the lobby to search for the owner. When he moved to the front desk to make inquiries about the owner, Laramie spun back into the bakery. "Forget the cookies, Duncan. I've got to go right now." "Already," he said, handing her a pink box tied in brown string. "What do I owe you?" "Nothing. It's on the house. I get a dozen free somethings every week, so I'm passing my benefit on to you." Thanks, but you don't, he waved her concern away. Just keep your promise and call me for lunch sometime. She gave him a quick hug and darted for the door, getting past the first bellman and making it through the resort's main door before finding her truck blocked by the other uniformed bellman. Standing to her left was Bear Claw Man. He handed his ticket to the valet, who ran off to fetch the man's vehicle. Laramie prayed the car would arrive and take him away before she suffered another humiliation. Her prayer was in vain. The bellman approached her, pointing to the truck. Is this your vehicle? She heard the derogatory tone to his voice. Pulling herself up straight to look as Alpine worthy as possible, she said, Yes, but my plans have changed and I'm leaving now. The bellman looked at her cookie box and pointed to the sign that said parking available for registering guests only. He kept his finger aimed at the sign and said, The only people allowed to park here are registering guests, not bakery customers. I see. I'm very sorry. I'll be leaving. The man did not immediately move from her path, and Laramie wondered if he might be intending to hold her car hostage until a tow truck arrived. A showdown began while she schemed to find a way around the man. Laramie was prepared to squeeze him out of the way if need be, but Bear Claw Man stepped to her side while addressing the bellman. She made a mistake and said she's sorry. I think you've made your point. Why don't you let her pass? Laramie felt smaller with every word he spoke. Another man's face flashed before her. He too wanted to help her, to save her. Look how that turned out, she told herself. She swallowed down her pride and began to offer a meek thank you when saw Bear Claw Man extend his hand to the bellman with a 20 exposed. As the bellman reached for the money, Laramie groaned, No! As she pushed Bear Claw Man's hand back and away. Startled, he explained, I'm trying to help. His voice sounded sincere, and his expression didn't show superiority or condescension. But this man had already seen her in an earlier vulnerable moment. The idea that he was now attempting to save her by paying off the bellman made her feel naive, childish, and capable. Thank you, she said, biting each word, but I don't need your help. She saw a Range Rover pull up and pointed to it. You can go. I've got this. Okay, then, said Bear Claw Man as he turned and left, but the stubborn bellman was still there, shaking his head slowly as if she were all the things the other man made her feel. She remembered the 20 she'd expected to pay for the cookies. Pulling it out, she offered it to the man along with an apology. I saw the sign. I thought I could be in and out so quickly that I wouldn't be a bother. I was wrong. I'm sorry. The man bowed and refused her money. Next time? There won't be a next time. Anxious to get away and put as many miles as possible between herself and that place, Laramie jumped in her truck, moved tools off the passenger seat to make room for the cookies, and put the vehicle in reverse without looking in her rearview mirror. She barely moved 4 feet when she felt a bump. Her stomach flipped, and she slumped against her seat when she saw the 2 bellmen shaking their heads at her as if she, once again, was a disappointment. She found the will to open the door, but before she took a step down, Bear Claw Man was there, offering her his hand and smiling sympathetically at her. There isn't any damage to my vehicle. My bumpers have bumpers. Laramie stiffened her back and took his hand, allowing him to help her down. He walked her to the front of his car and pointed to thick rubber pads attached to his bumper. As he said, they had protected his metal bumper from hers. She took a breath and fell against her truck. The man continued, I didn't inspect your vehicle for damage. Laramie eyed him, unsure if he was being friendly or making sarcastic comments about her junker. She knew it was time for another bitter swallow of pride. I'm so sorry. I was so upset that No need. I understand. Neither of us is having a particularly great day. The regret-filled tone in his voice mirrored the ache in her heart. This guy had his own troubles. Maybe he did know how she felt. Well, thanks for understanding. He nodded and lifted a quick hand in goodbye. Laramie waited until his vehicle disappeared down the lane before she started the truck and drove away. She thought going home would be the hardest part of this trip. After the past hour at the Alpine, facing her parents looked better and better. At least things couldn't get any worse.